Thank you for all you people that are coming in today. And we're going to be doing this. We're going to try to do it like every Monday. Again, watercolor lessons. It seemed like everybody liked the first one that MaryLeah did. And she's going to be working on another one today. One of the things, if you need certain things that aren't available, we do have some materials that we can either mail to you or you can pick up here too. So we want to try to make sure that everybody stays creative and stays creative safely.
This is one that I did in the winter time, and it's perfect for today because we have snow, right? This is another one that I did, and again, it's in the snow. So we're thinking about birch trees today, and we're gonna do a fun technique that is easy and lots of fun. You can use the colors that you have. If you want to make orange trees, that's awesome, or they could be pink. So you use the colors that you're wanting to use. The first thing we're going to start out with is thinking about the materials that we need today, and those are written on the board if you can see it. We need a pencil and an eraser, and we talked about the round brush. We talked about watercolor paper, and it can be really any size that works for you and that you have on hand. A bit of paper towel or some tissue would work well. You're going to need a palette or something to mix your paints on. I just have a little plate right now that I've got my pigments squirted out there. You can kind of see them. That works well if you don't have a palette. And what else? We need this little piece of flexible straight edge that might be a credit card that is cut into about a 1 by 2 inch piece. It needs to be flexible for this project, so that's why we have that. I think, and water, you need water for watercolor, so make sure you have a little tub of water near you. So we're going to think about first where we want to position these trees, these birch trees, where you want to place them on your paper. So we're going to think about where we want our horizon line, and that's the line or the place where the land and the sky meet. So we're going to think about whether we want to make a high horizon line. I'm going to put this under here just to make it high horizon line or a low horizon line. So you can take your pencil. I'm going to do kind of a lower horizon line. I would like to avoid making mine halfway. In other words, try to avoid putting it into the center of the paper. So I did mine a little lower than the center, which is great.
A third of the way. Yeah, it's hard to see, but it looks like about a third of the way.
And I could draw it really dark, and that will help you. But you want to draw lightly with your pencil. So I've established where my horizon line is going to be, and mine is relatively about a third of the way. Once you get that done, then you're also going to be thinking about where do you want to place your trees. And remember that if they're lower on the paper, the farther down towards the edge of the paper they are, the bigger they'll be. And the ones that are farther up towards the top of the paper would be the smaller trees. So that's going to create a sense of perspective and a sense of depth. So we can change that if we want to. Now, some people might like to just make a row of trees, and that's fine too. You can make a row of trees that are all the same, placed in the same spot, or you can change it up. See that I changed where the bases are, the bottom parts are of the trees, and then this one is higher toward the top of the paper, and it looks like it's farther away in the distance.
Smaller too.
And it's smaller, right. So I want to get a few of these in, at least make 3 of them. You can make more if you want to, and you could even make one that is coming from the very bottom of the paper, which would be very close to me, wouldn't it?
Can you come in with not even on the paper, off?
It's not, it's off the paper.
Off the paper, got it.
You could do that too. So, but I'll put one right here. Okay, so I have 3.
It looks like a happy picture.
It looks like a happy picture.
Yes.
Yeah.
All the smiley faces.
Yeah, little smiley faces. I'm taking my brush and getting some water, and I'm going to make a little puddle of water and add some of these colors here. And I'm mixing them together on the palette. I'm going to get a nice, I like to call it a juicy wash with colors here that would be really pretty for a birch tree. I like the blue, I like the Payne's gray, and I love to use burnt sienna. It's a very nice warm gray. So I've already got a few colors here mixed up in puddles. You can see them. They're all ready now to go. I don't want to be too stingy, I like to use that word, with my paint because I need it to do the job for me. I need to have enough pigment to get me through the trees that I'm going to be making. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to take my little credit card, and I'm going to do a practice one here for you. Taking my little straight edge, and I'm putting it into this mixture. You can see that. Okay, good. And it's on the edge of this credit card. And I'm going to use the edge to do a mark with this, and I'm going to start at the base. It's hard to do this upside down. I'm going to start at the base of my line that I made, and I'm going to work my way to the top of the paper doing this. So I'm going to start at the base and work my way up. I might need to get more color as I go along, and that's okay. Think about double loading your brush, but this isn't a brush. Getting lots of pigment on it, and hopefully it will work really well. If it doesn't, that's okay. I can try it again, right? So have fun with this. And I'm starting and I'm working right to left on mine because I'm left-handed. You might choose to work the other way, working from left to right, but I'm going to start on the right side of the smiley face that's here at the base, and I'm going to create this base of my tree. And I'm going to go like that. And I'm going to hold this up and show you my first pass here. You see? So it's sort of keeping the paper white, the watercolor paper white, showing through as I go along. And it's going to be different every mark that I make with the credit card. It's going to be different, and that's okay. We want it to be like that because in nature, that's how things are, right? So I'm going along, and I'm going to do another one. Whoops, that one had a lot of color on it. Oh, that's okay. And these trees perhaps taper off a little bit and get smaller at the top, or narrower would be the correct word. So they're tapering as they go along. This will need to dry. So while this one's drying, I'm going to do another one. And I've got it marked here at the base where my second one's going to go. And I might dip into a little bit more of the blue. And I'm going to do the same technique here as I move along with these. The motion that I'm making is sort of a dipping motion, I would say. A dipping kind of a motion. This one is a little bit paler. Now, if it's too pale, you can always go back and go over it again. There's my second one. You can see there's a little bit more blue at the top because it just randomly happened like that, didn't it? I'm continuing on. I'm gonna add another one here, maybe right about here. You can also space your trees. What's the right word? So that they're not all the same, so that there's different space between them.
What is that
I
word?
can't think of it. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. The negative space
Yes.
is different between these trees. They're not all lined up exactly the same.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so I made another one right here. So it's a little bit closer, so the spaces in between are uneven.
Now, is it depending on the pressure you put on it? Is that too anything to do with
I
it?
think you have to experiment a bit with the pressure so that it's
As it bends, right?
as it bends. Yep. So you want to make sure that you've mixed water with your pigment. You don't want straight pigment. As I think about it and as I'm doing this, is that when I've got this plastic piece loaded up with color, it's going to be darker in my first pass as I'm going along, and so that the darkness is on one side of the tree. So you might want to think about your lights and darks and where that would happen. And if you want to, you can always go back and create a little darker area on one side of the trees. Now remember that you wouldn't want to fill it all in completely because that's not how light would hit, right? We can just kind of create a little bit of darkness here and there. So intermittently is what I would say with the darks that you place in here. So there's the one that I did. For the next step, I need these to be dry. Take a short break and let it get dry, and then we'll go on to the next portion of this lesson. Now, some people might wonder why don't you do the sky first with something like this? Well, if I do the sky first, because watercolor is transparent, right? The trees are not going to have the white showing through, because if I did the sky blue, then I would see blue where my white is on these birch trees, and I want to have the white. I want to retain the white. So that's why I'm going to do my sky later. Now, you could also do this, and it would take a long time, but you could do it this way. Put masking fluid down for the tree trunks first, and then you can, work with that area and paint it in, paint your sky, paint your land if you want to, and then you'll have to remove the masking fluid and then do the same technique. So that would be another way you could approach something like this. You can play around with it and see what you come up with. I just didn't really have time to do that today, and I think that it's nice to do this fresh approach. It also helps us to remember with watercolor that we need to save the white. And so I purposely save the white so that I can go back and I can show you ways that you can make the sky and you can make the land in this painting. Pairs. You could add a little more color here and there, and I'm going to pop in a bit of purple in mine, just a little bit here. You can do that if you want to. What we're going to do with this next step is to rinse your brush and make sure that it's got clean water. And I'm going to start over on this trunk that I did here first, this one right here, because it's dry. So I'm going to be taking my brush, and I can show you this way. I'm going to take my brush with clean water on it, and I'm going to move it from the bottom, from where the tree is growing here, from the bottom, the base, up along here. And you can see that I just want to do it very quickly. And it sort of blends these colors, these pigments together in a very lovely way. I don't know if you can see that. It moved the paint just a bit. I still have left some white areas. You can see here where some of these white areas are left intact. I'm going to do it again with the next tree because that one's dry. I'm going to do it this way again. I'm going to lay it down here, and I'm moving my brush just straight up. And it,
That's so cool.
yeah, just blended that tree right here. Rinsing my brush between because I've got color on my brush, so I want to rinse it. And I'm going to do it again now right here with the next tree that I did. I'm just bringing it all the way up to the very top of my paper and blending it. So I continue on with all the trees that I've made, and I'm starting at the base again and bringing it all the way up. Probably 1 or 2 passes is all you need with your brush. If you start to scrub it, then you're going to lose the lovely curve marks and tones and values that you've created with this very simple technique. So here's my bigger tree that I did, and I'm doing the same thing. It might take me, because it's a wider tree, I might have to go on one side and go up, and then I'm going to go on the other side and go up.
MaryLeah, you had them using cold pressed paper, and that's because it's got more texture, right?
Yes, the cold press paper.
And that's what's the paper is picking up all these little,
all the bumps.
all the bumps.
Yeah, all the texture.
And it really makes a difference, so that if you're using a very smooth paper, you're not going to be able to see as much.
That's right.
As MaryLeah's with her cold press paper, which has that bit of texture to it.
That's right. So now I need to let this dry again before I proceed to the next part of this. So once it's dry, then I'm going to be creating a background, and I'm going to make a blue sky on mine just because it'd be kind of fun. And then I think I'll skip the snow. But everything was covered in snow this morning and yesterday, wasn't it? And I'm going to do a little green grass down here on this one. Everybody ready? We're going to go on and add a bit of sky. So you'll need to probably get some other colors out unless you want to just use your ultramarine blue if you had that one. I'm just going to switch to my other palette. And I've got ultramarine blue here, which is a great color for sky. If you want to, you can also use cobalt blue, which is very pretty as well. So I'm getting phthalo blue would be pretty. Yeah, it'd be lovely. Yeah, I like to mix several colors together for the sky, so that would be great. Now, when I do the sky, I'm going to dampen my surface first before I apply the paint. So I'll need to use clean water.
Now, why do you do that, MaryLeah? Why do you dampen?
So we dampen the paper first so that when I apply the color, it moves and it's soft, so that I don't get a lot of hard edges. So that's why I would do that, definitely.
Gotcha.
Yep. So I want to have my color that I'm going to use, I want to have it ready so that
the paper doesn't dry between.
That's right. So the paper is going to not dry so quickly. Well, it would dry at whatever rate it dries. But anyway, I can quickly apply the color.
Yes.
Okay. So hopefully Larry will edit this. Sorry. Okay.
You're doing great.
Oh, you're funny. Okay. So I'm going to get this section wet right here next to this larger tree. I'm putting color or water here to get this damp. And then I think I can go in between here and get this damp as well. I want to have a little time so that the water can soak into the pigments to the into the paper, into the fibers of the paper, so that it won't be sitting in a puddle on top of the paper. So I might have to go back and wet some more, but this looks great. Looks good. So anyway, I'm going to be adding color. Now I don't have to fill the whole thing with color. I can just put it wherever I want. I'm adding a little color here. I don't know if you can see. So I'm not painting it really, really solid. I'm leaving some light white showing through, which is totally great. That's good. Oh, there's that bright blue. That's pretty. So I don't have to go right up to the trees. I can leave some space between them.
Doesn't it help when you wet the paper because it naturally kind of flows towards those?
That's right. So yes, that's true. So this got a bit dry, so now I have to put some water here. And actually it's kind of light blue water, isn't it? That's okay. So I'm getting the sky in here. Notice that I'm not painting it in brush strokes that go back and forth. I'm painting kind of more just maybe in a circular motion would be a good way to describe it. Now you can see that I'm holding it up, right? And I'm getting some drips down at the bottom, which is fine. And all I need to really do is turn it the other way. So I'm going to use gravity to have it go the other way. Okay.
And MaryLeah, isn't it that you like to not sometimes tape down your paper so that you can?
That's right.
This is one of the things I've noticed when MaryLeah teaches and does her watercolor. She has the paper so that she can let the paper do some of the work for her too with moving it around.
Right, right. So we can use gravity and move the paint. Okay, so I'm happy with this sky and I need to let it dry. While that is drying, I could think about the ground here and get that painted if I want to, but I have to be a bit careful because of the sky here that's wet. So we'll let that dry. Does anybody? So the next thing that we're going to want to do is create the ground here. Now, if it's winter and you want to show the snow, then you don't need to do very much. I'll show you this again. This is one that I did that is a snowy scene with some people walking way in the distance. And it's very light and airy and it's like a nice sunny day actually. So if you want to do something, if you want to make some grass on the ground where we're starting to get a little grass maybe, but I think we've got a little ways to go for that. But you can use your imagination. So I'm going to use green, which is the green you could use would be sap green would be great. If you have Viridian, that will work as well. The Viridian needs to have a bit of blue in it or yellow in it. So you can also put red with Viridian blue. That works really well. So you want to mix up the color for for the land here. And I'm going to use the very similar technique by dampening this surface first here around the trees where I want to have the grass. And I'm using clean water as I go along here, getting it damp. So this creates softness and it avoids hard edges when I paint this way. So I've got my green mixed up. I've actually got a little bit of blue in it, which I thought would be kind of fun. It doesn't have to be all the same color. You can use different colors. That's good.
Yeah, I can see on your palette you've got a bunch of different greens
I've
you
got
can choose from.
different greens to use here. I know that under the trees and around the trees, it would be a bit darker, and I can always go back and add that later. But right now I'm just going to kind of start with a little green. We call this a wash when I'm adding color like this. And I'm actually leaving a bit of white as I go along. I'm not going to fill the whole thing. It might be a little bit lighter in areas and then a little darker in other areas. I'll go back and add more darks too. You can make a blue grass, that's okay. So I'm getting a lot of green here, some spring green. I'm using my brush going back and forth as opposed to straight up and down at this point. If I change the angle of my brush, then maybe I'll be adding a little grass, some little grasses here. I'm just going along, and you can see that because this is wet on this surface, it's all blending together really nicely. I actually just added a little bit of burnt sienna. So I want it to be a little darker maybe on this side. Okay, so again, I gotta get it wet. It's always nice to have lots of options for colors. So if you change it up by mixing several colors on your palette, then you are ready to go, and they're all right there for you, and you can just dip into them as you are painting along. So if you think you need something that's a little dark, then you've got it ready. Okay, I want to go all the way to the edge of my paper, get it all filled all the way along. Okay, so it's kind of pretty.
Very.
It's not too drippy, it's not too wet, but make it a little darker here while it's wet. Now, if I want to create some harder edges, then I would need to let this dry completely before I go in and add some very dark areas. They would be nice and crisp because they would not be moving because the paper wouldn't be wet, be dry.
Now, is that considered dry brushing then?
Yeah, that would be called dry brush. Let me do that. Yep. But while it's still wet, you can go in and get some darks happening where they need to be. And you can think about, again, your light source. My darker areas are mostly on this side, right? Maybe those are some patches of snow, like at my house. So the next part of this will be adding a few more darks to my trees that I made, and then adding the branches. So we want to make sure that the sky is completely dry before I do this. And I might hand this over to Larry for the hairdryer.
Yep.
Just to get it dry. This is a sample, but this is one that I started. And I'm going to be going back to the colors that I used for my tree trunks. So here I am back here. And yes, it is messy. I'm going to be using those colors to create the branches here. So I'm starting with rinsing my brush. And this time, I'm not going to dampen the surface first. I'm just going to draw right on here and make my branches for the tree. Now, you could draw them first if you want to. That would be fine. I'm not going to draw them first, but you can if you want to.
You're going to be drawing with your paintbrush.
I'm going to be drawing with my paintbrush, right? So what I'm doing is I'm getting a bit of paint on the tip of my brush. So I'm going to use the brown, or the burnt sienna, I should say, the Payne's gray, and I'm going to get it on there. So what I usually do, I'm going to do it on a scrap piece of paper here, just to show you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start, and this is a blank sheet of paper just to show you, but I'm going to work from the trunk of the tree with my brush, and I'm using the tip of my brush just to draw a branch. And the branches do not have to be completely solid. Okay, can you see what I just did? Okay, so I'm drawing these on the tree. This is a pretend tree. So the branches are a little thicker as they are where they're connected to the tree trunk, and then as they, so here I am working on this bigger tree, and I'm going to just start somewhere in the area here of this trunk and bring my brush up along here.
That's a happy tree.
It's a happy tree. It's a cheerful tree. So I'm going to go along and I'm going to create these branches on all of my trees. You can put just a few branches, or maybe you want to put lots of branches. That's okay. And some of the branches maybe crisscross each other, or meet, or go in front of other trees. So as I said, you might choose to draw these branches first. Maybe you feel a little more comfortable doing that. Doing all the branches that I want to put into this painting. I can always add more, right? So as you've got this paint mixed up, and you might choose to create some darks, more dark areas along the way here with your tree trunks. So I'm popping in a bit of darker green around the base of the trees here, just to give it a little more depth. And then I can show you what I just did here. So I added green here, and if I don't want that hard edge, I can just soften below it with some clean water, so it's not quite as much of a hard edge. Same here. So just soften it away with clean water, and that way I'm getting a bit more of, even a bit of a shadow here, which is nice.
Yeah.
So you can add some darks. Because this is relatively dry, it will work nicely.
You can just go to our website, rumriverart.com, to see all the virtual classes we're offering every week. Okay? Thanks a lot, guys.